Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Harris, and today I'm talking to Bev Harris, no relation, who writes under the pen name of B.C. Harris. Conspiracy of Cats is Bev's debut novel and is a supernatural murder mystery set in northern Tanzania. Hello, Bev. Welcome, and thank you for coming to talk to me on Book Talk Radio Club.
Hi, Claire, and thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. Bev, would you like to give the listeners a brief synopsis of the book?
Well, Conspiracy of Cats is the story of Joss Ferguson. She's a young woman who gets the opportunity to travel to Tanzania to visit the home her dead uncle Peter built before he died. A colourful cast of characters await her. There's the Naireri family who take care of Peter's house, and Peter himself. He may be dead, but that's never going to stop him. There's also Wendell, who's the good-looking Australian game driver who's got the hots for Joss. There's also a legendary Maasai Libon, various Maasai warriors, and some incredible cats, large and small, who create the conspiracy of the title. This is a story of magic as well as revenge, of love, jealousy, greed, but there are also some comic elements as well as Joss and Peter embark upon their quest not only to prepare Joss for a very different future, but also to unmask his killer.
Sounds interesting. So, here we have Joss Ferguson, as you said, a young woman living in Edinburgh, Scotland, who's just landed in Tanzania. She must be quite fearless and adventurous. Tell us more about Joss. What kind of woman is she?
Well, she's not at all fearless. Joss is full of fear. She would describe herself as a rubbish human being. It sort of goes back to her childhood. When she was a teenager, she experienced a very traumatic event, a personal tragedy that she's completely failed to get over, and so because of that she's failed to grow up. She currently shares the Edinburgh home of her reclusive Aunt Jude, so she's never really lived. She's kind of been stuck in all that quiet security, so she doesn't have any life skills. You know, she's low on self-esteem, on self-confidence, all the things that a lot of people take for granted. Joss doesn't have any of that. She's kind of been cloistered and kept away from everything. So she's aware of these shortcomings, and she rises to the challenge to both travel. But when she lands in Tanzania, this woman is way out of her comfort zone, and she's anxious, she's afraid, and she's really just putting one foot in front of the other. But I would describe her as being brave.
Yeah.
Because she made the journey, and she made it alone, and she desperately wants to change.
She travels to northern Tanzania to visit the house her uncle Peter built before he died. But Peter isn't as dead as he should be. He was murdered, and he wants his niece to help him exact revenge upon his killer. How does he contact Joss through her dreams, without giving too much away, of course?
Well, no. He actually makes an appearance to Joss. No sooner has she arrived and unpacked than he makes himself known to her. He's waited a long time to meet his niece, and he eagerly greets her, which sends her screaming from the scene in a clatter of garden furniture because she thinks that she's seen a ghost. If you ask Peter, he definitely doesn't think of himself as being a ghost. And he might be right, because he's a very complex and powerful entity who's eager to explore the possibilities not only of his own otherworldly existence, but also of where his alliance with Joss might take them both. And as the story progresses, they bond over a shared love of margaritas, of all things, and they begin to combine in new and interesting ways, and they often, it's often a comic result that you get with them.
I think I'll have one too, please. I do like a margarita.
Yes, absolutely.
So why set the book in northern Tanzania? Do you have any connection to the area?
Well, unfortunately not. I've never been lucky enough to travel there. I actually first came across Tanzania a long time ago when reading about Africa in general, and I just fell in love with the place. It has so many varied cultures who all get along. It has an incredible diversity of landscapes, from deserts to rainforests and Mount Kilimanjaro, and some amazing wildlife. And I've often daydreamed about going there, of going on the game drives and walks through the rainforest and actually climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. I would love to go, and I really do hope to go there one
Lions, ghosts, and a bit of Maasai magic. That's intriguing. How much research did you have to carry out regarding the Maasai magic? What kind of magic is it?
Well, the research was really more into the Maasai people. I loved their semi-nomadic lifestyle and the fabulously beaded and coiffed warriors. I don't know if you've ever seen them.
Yes.
These guys
Yeah, of course.
really impressive. And I'd love to meet them for real and to hear their songs and see them dancing. But the Maasai have a strict social hierarchy, and you become an elder when you're old enough and wise enough. But some of the elders, the particularly wise ones, earn the title of Laibon, and these are the shaman who guide the tribe. They're prophets and healers, and Westerners might refer to these men as witch doctors.
Right.
And there was one man in particular who caught my attention, and his name was Mbatien Oli Supet. And he was the greatest of all the Maasai Laibons, and he prophesied the colonization of the country by white men, and also the coming of the Iron Snake, which is the railway.
Yeah.
And he said it would split Maasai land into two, and he was right. But this great man is the inspiration behind Edward Laputo Ngoyo, who's my own legendary Laibon, and he watches the future coming through the flames. And in order to remain at the White House long after his death, Peter needed a powerful ally.
Right.
So I invented this Laibon, and his power and his magic come wholly from my imagination.
How wonderful. I love that. Did you base Joss's character on anyone you know, or is she an amalgam of people?
Well, I suppose Joss is the frightened kid that hides inside most of us grown-ups. We all have issues and fears, and
Sure.
I suppose the trick is learning to face it and overcome it, so we can keep sort of growing and evolving into someone more complete, and that's just Joss.
Over the years and many interviews I've carried out, most authors that write fiction say that the characters seem to become three-dimensional and begin to tell the story themselves. Did you find that happening, Bev?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's weird. Joss and especially Peter, they both evolved way beyond what I originally imagined for them. All of the characters started out on their journey through the story just as vague individuals I barely knew. I might have had ideas about where they were all going and what they needed to do and how they would get to the end of the story, but they each developed in their own particular ways just as the writing progressed. And the entire process was a great big learning curve, I suppose, and eventually the story really did begin to write itself. I had trouble keeping up sometimes, hammering away on the keyboard, trying to type as fast as I could, and typing at the speed of thought, which isn't easy, and the mistakes were just ridiculous. But I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was a really brilliant experience.
Why a supernatural murder mystery as opposed to a regular murder mystery?
Well, I suppose it was because Peter was already dead, and I needed him to be around so that he could reveal the secrets that not only expose his killer, but also allow Joss to move on into her future. And also his continued presence has also allowed more light-hearted elements of the story to develop, because there's some really dark moments within the story. Some readers have already described them as being quite shocking, but Peter and his entertaining relationship with Joss, they managed to let the light back in.
Right. Will we be hearing more from Joss in the future?
Well, when I originally wrote Conspiracy of Cats, right up until I'd finished it, and submitted it to the publisher, I imagined that it would be a standalone story. I expected that Joss and Peter would now move out of my head and allow the next sort of bookload of characters to come in and grow, but it's not really worked out like that. Fairly recently, it was sort of round about publication time, I suppose the book was on my mind a lot, so I was going to bed at night and I was thinking about it, wondering what would happen and how it would be received, and I did dream about it, but I had a really vivid dream about Joss, and to be honest, I normally dreamed about Peter, so this was quite unusual. It did sort of grab my attention even when I was dreaming. And when I woke up, I wrote it all down, and I knew that it could be the opening for a sequel. So I discussed it with Ian something that I want to do. It's going to take a while because I've got other stories in the pipeline, but Conspiracy Ends, that's what I think I might call it, Conspiracy Ends, and it's definitely on the cards.
Who is the target audience for conspiracy? God, sorry, I'm tongue-tied. I'll try again. Who is the target? Who's the target audience for Conspiracy of Cats? Who will enjoy it, would you say?
Well, so far I've received quite amazing feedback, really, from readers of all ages and backgrounds, and from lots of different countries. Even people who would normally read that type of book have told me how much they've enjoyed it. My dad, for example, he said he loved it, and he only ever reads political thrillers. So I honestly think that, you know, anyone who picks it up, if they're, you know, if they pick it up and they start to read it, then I think there's no reason why anyone couldn't enjoy it, except perhaps as a word of caution, there are quite a few sweary words. Joss is Scottish, so swearing is kind of a national pastime up here. But also, you know, there are like a few dark moments, and so maybe, you know, younger readers should be aware.
Let's talk a little bit about you now, Bev. Was there a particular book, film, or an author that inspired your daydreams to become an author?
Well, gosh, I've always been a reader. For as long as I recall, I have loved escaping into books. And Agatha Christie is probably my all-time favourite. I mean, she's a bit of a hero of mine. Thanks to her, I adore all forms of crime, murder, police procedurals, and I still choose those books to this day. But I like to daydream, and I love all forms of make-believe. And I actually used to work in the theatre. I worked backstage for 15 years, bringing magic to life before the eyes of all the audiences, and what a thrill that is to be part of that. It's utterly amazing.
I bet.
And writing for me has just become an extension of that, and it's a way to finally bring something from my own imagination into life.
You're a Scot who, at the time of writing, had just finished renovating a farmhouse in France, a labour of love that began from first sight back in 2016. Tell me about that.
Okay. Oh my goodness. That was me and Ian. We've often taken risks, but that was one of the big ones. Ian's my husband, and we met during horrible divorces. So we had one each, and we both walked away with nothing. So when we did get together, we rented.
Right.
And after a few years, we realised that we were in it for the long haul. So we knew that we had to stop paying someone else's mortgage and get one of our own. Now, being in your 50s and living in super expensive Wiltshire, that's easier said than done.
Sure.
So we looked around for other ways to get back on the property ladder, and we found ourselves in France. We discovered this big old house that was for sale, and it had been on the market for a dozen years, and it was still being looked after by the family. So the inside of the house was in good condition. It was very old-fashioned, very dated, but there wasn't any dampness. You know, it was being warmed in the winter, it was being aired in the summer.
Right.
But the garden was a different matter entirely. It was so overgrown, you might have found Sleeping Beauty in the middle of all the brambles. Had a machete. It was really, really bad. But the house itself, as soon as I walked over the threshold of that house, I just felt so warm and welcome that it really was sort of calling out to me. And the funny thing was that we only went to see it because we'd been looking at various houses online, and this one in particular had the most appalling wallpaper. Every room that we looked at was more gaudy than the one before, so we only went to see it to see the wallpaper. But we both fell in love with it, so we bought this house. And it was supposed to be for our retirement. We had a 5-year plan, but then Brexit happened and a health matter became a problem. So we ended up moving into the house within the first year, and we then started to kick and shove it into the 21st century, which was a challenge. But that house became a wonderful home for us. We absolutely loved it. We met some great people over there, discovered skills that we never knew we had. We drank loads of wine, and we even learned to speak French. But what happened next was, you know, that meant our priorities shifted all over again.
Let's go through that. So then disaster struck in the form of the pandemic, and France went into a strict lockdown. And with time to do more than simply daydream about writing books, a new project began to shape. Writing began as an escape from the fear and isolation that was soon affecting everyone, and quickly flourished to become Conspiracy of Cats. So tell me about that. How long does it take you to write the book?
Well, before I tell you that, just to sort of go back over what you said, lockdown in France was very strict. We had months of being confined to our homes, and we were only allowed 1 kilometre radius around our home for exercise every day.
Wow.
And this was like, even the dogs were stir crazy. It felt like we were under siege. It was really quite a challenging time. But at some point, Ian suggested that I write the story that I told him a bit about over the years. Usually, when I was moaning and complaining about wanting to write but never having the time. And I thought, right, I'm going to go for that. So I knew that I had some notes, obviously, from Tanzania and Maasai and all this research that I had done, and I'd meticulously made lots of notes, and I'd saved them on a floppy disk.
Right.
Do you remember floppy disk? Oh my goodness. Well, I had one, and I dug it out, and I stuck it into an external drive, which was connected up to my laptop, only to discover that the damn disk was corrupted.
Oh no.
It was completely useless. I had nothing.
Oh.
Absolutely nothing.
Oh, God.
Just what I had inside my head.
Nightmare.
Yeah. So, I just thought, I have to get this done, because I really want to do it. Otherwise, I'm going to go mad because of all these living restrictions.
Yeah.
And I tried to sort of treat it like a job, a full-time job, and I often worked weekends as well. But it was a job that I adored. It was like being in love, Claire.
Yeah.
I couldn't get enough of it. And when I wasn't writing, I was thinking about writing. And in the end, it took me just 2.5 months to write the story.
Wow. It needed to come out of you, didn't it?
Yeah. Yes, I think it did. And COVID has kind of been my own silver lining for that horrible big cloud that was over us all, and in a way I'm grateful.
Yeah, but you know what? I've heard this so much, and I mean, it was the same for me. It was absolutely dreadful, but at the same time, a lot of things have changed in my life, and they've changed. Oh my God, so much for the better.
Yes, fantastic. Yes, it's really set. We're like dolphins swimming in the canals of Venice.
Yeah, exactly. You're already receiving great reviews for Conspiracy of Cats, including, "This is a wonderful book, very clever, very detailed, obviously incredibly researched. There are a few plot lines included which all tie up brilliantly, no loose ends. Oh, and there's lions, ghosts and a bit of Maasai magic. What more could you possibly need?" And, "Mysterious, exciting book with twists and turns. You won't want to put it down. Absolutely riveting. Also, a remarkably original story written in a vivid and lively style. It's beautifully written story of surprises, great imagination and well-presented characters. I look forward to reading B.C. Harris's next book." High praise indeed, Bev. Well done. So lastly, where can Book Talk Radio Club's listeners purchase Conspiracy of Cats?
Well, the book is available direct from my publishers, who are Olympia Publishers. You can buy it through their website. It's also available on Amazon. And for those who prefer to buy from actual bookshops, you can order a copy using the ISBN. But for any listeners who perhaps can't afford to buy the book but still would like to read it, you can try your local library. A lot of libraries have got it.
Right, well that's great. All right, well thank you, Bev. Please come back on Book Talk Radio Club again. I'd love to chat with you and hear more and hear how you're getting on. In the meantime, good luck for the future, and thank you everyone for listening to Book Talk Radio Club.
Thank you, Claire, and have a great Christmas when it comes.
You too. Thanks, Bev. Bye now.